6.5 million jobs in the last year and a half, a record 600,000 business incorporations in 1983, and the largest increase in real after-tax personal income since World War II. We're enjoying the highest level of business investment in history, and America has renewed its leadership in developing the vast new opportunities in science and high technology. America is on the move again and expanding toward new eras of opportunity for everyone.
Michael Reagan is a political consultant and chairman of the Reagan Group and Reagan.com. Michael, welcome back. So how did your dad do it? I mean, what was so different then versus now?
Well, it was different then. This Ronald Reagan lowered taxes. Ronald Reagan cut back regulation and stimulated the economy. I mean, people forget about the Carter recession. The Carter recession he took over from was what? 7.5% unemployment, going to 10.8% unemployment, 21% interest rates, 18% inflation. And Bill Clinton says there was no worse economy. We had gas lines, we had malaise. Ronald Reagan went in there, lowered taxes, cut capital gains, and the rest is history, as you just heard from my father. 3 years.
Talk about we're looking at the median family income. Just take a look at how it is now. There's been about a $4,000 loss since December 2007 when the recession is said to have begun. So 54,916 was the real median household income back then. Today it is 50,964. And during your dad, just keep this full screen on the screen so I can show the folks. No, put it back up if you would, please. When your dad was president, in his recovery from 81 to 86, real median household income rose by $3,380. I mean, that's back in the 1980s dollars. It rose. So here we've lost $4,000. Back then we went up almost $3,500. Why? Why do you think that is?
Because people were going back to work again. Unemployment, remember, was double digits. He brought down unemployment. People were going back to work. People were investing in business and industry was, in fact, growing. And so, by the way, was the revenue going into the federal government. When my father took over the presidency, the federal government was bringing in about $500 billion a year. When he left, with that trickle-down economic theory, they were bringing in almost $1 trillion a year. So the problem has never been higher taxes. The problem has always been the spending that goes on in Washington, D.C. And if you look at Bush 41's economy, the last 2 years of the Bush 41 economy were stronger than, in fact, the first 2 years of Clinton's economy. And Clinton's economy didn't happen until 1994, when Republicans were elected. Newt Gingrich took over as Speaker of the House, and they lowered capital gains, reformed welfare, and brought a balanced budget. They dragged Bill Clinton to the table on this, and now he's living the Bill Clinton economy.
Well, that's an interesting point because, Bill Clinton's remarks last night suggested, he was able to really turn things around, but he had to work with congressional Republicans on those issues, and that's when he so-called, did the triangulation where he worked across the aisle because he was forced to. Your dad, 55 months into the Reagan recovery, the number of Americans drawing unemployment insurance had gone down almost 12%. So he lowered the people getting unemployment insurance by almost 12%. Today, there's been an increase since the 2007 recession began of 19%. So he lowered it 11, almost 12%. Now it's up 19%. I mean, the numbers don't compare well for our current president, but he points out, Michael, when he took office, we were shedding 800,000 jobs a month. So he stabilized the ship.
Yeah, he says that, but the reality of it is we've lost 4 million jobs since the recession began back in 2007. Net 4 million jobs. With Ronald Reagan, we gained 7.8 million jobs from the time the recession started, the Carter recession started. And so the problem with this president is he's refusing to look at history. He's refusing to look at Coolidge of the 20s, looking at John F. Kennedy of the 60s, Ronald Reagan of the 80s. He's still going down this Keynesian path, thinking that more spending is going to, in fact, solve the problems of the world that we live in today. And that just absolutely is not true. It has never worked in the history of this country. Ronald Reagan understood that. That's why he was reelected, because the economy had turned around, and it was done in a 3-year period of time. He didn't ask, give me 4 more years so I can fix what I haven't been able to do. And by the way, didn't blame Jimmy Carter. He wasn't sitting back blaming Jimmy Carter for everything. He took control, he took the reins of Washington, and he went forward. And how did he get his tax cut passed in August of 1981? He invited Tip O'Neill to the White House. Tip O'Neill went up to the White House. He came back the next day after having dinner, told his staff he's on board with Ronald Reagan's tax cut. And they said to Tip O'Neill, Tip, how'd you do that? And Tip O'Neill said, because Ronald Reagan taught me about the greatness of America, not taxes.